Wow, episode 28. Thanks for all the great feedback. I'm Chris Chase with the Western Flyer Foundation, and if the sign of a story well told is it leaves the audience wanting more, then definitely episode 28 hit a home run. I got so much feedback. I got comments, comment box, emails, people on the street saying they loved the episode, but they wanted to dive deeper into corking, more about the tools, the essence of corking a wood boat. So anyway, episode 29, Corking 2.0, hopefully it'll answer some of those questions. But before we get into the episode any further here, I want to try to answer probably the most common question I got via email, comment box, folks on the street. You know, what's up with the mallet? You know, why is it such a unique, why is it so long? Never seen anything quite like it before. So these three mallets, though they're different in age, they're different in size, they are all the exact same design. They're always a hardwood, lignum vitae, you know, black mesquite, live oak. Sometimes I've seen cocobolo. I've actually seen an ebony mallet made that worked pretty well. But the design is always the exact same. It's always a long head with a long handle, a large diameter handle. They have rings at both ends. These are hardened steel that are meant to, you know, keep the end of the mallet from actually mushrooming as you spend all day just, you know, popping that iron. Sooner or later that would mushroom back. There are always two rings right up near where the handle protrudes through the head, and these are essentially keeper rings that are keeping the mallet from splitting over time from all that energy being absorbed back into the head. But probably the most common question, both mallets, this much smaller mallet, this bigger mallet, is what are these slots? Why are the slots in there? My understanding, my explanation for those is they're essentially little shock absorbers that are absorbing some of the vibration, maybe not the energy, definitely not the sound, because I think they actually make the mallet louder. But it's absorbing some of the vibration that is coming from the iron back into the head of the mallet and ultimately down the handle and into the arm of the corker. I think if we could see the head of the mallet on a very micro level, it would actually be expanding and contracting around this split, this actually intentionally made cut through the head. It would have to be on a very micro level, but I think they're absorbing some of that energy. Over time, this design has been around definitely for well over 100 years, early 20th century, maybe even before that. But it really has evolved to be an extremely unique tool that does an extremely specific job, you know, much like the Western Flyer itself. You know, so much of the things, the tools, the boats were around are just an evolutionary design, that form and function to the nth degree, I would say. But anyway, it really is a very unique tool doing a very unique job. But let's dive into episode 29.
I've always learned it as horsing. A beetle and a horse are the two terms used. So I have 3 horsing irons, which I know some people refer to as housing irons. And they're very similar in that they have varying thicknesses. This one, somebody welded on a tab on the outside to make it as fat as they wanted it. They're very hard to find, so anytime I find one, I buy it. And surprisingly, at the Shipwrights Co-op, oh man, between all of us who cork and use beetles and horsing irons, I wouldn't be surprised if there were upwards of 100 of these horsing irons. This is a live oak beetle. and this is a two-person process. So one person holds the horsing iron in the seam, while the other person swings the beetle at the knob. And one of the things you learn is the person beetling, when they miss the knob and hit the handle, boy, that stings for the person holding the horsing iron. So it's always been my rule that if you have a mishit or you hit the handle, it's time to switch. So what goes around comes around, I guess.
Go all the way. A couple jobs I was working on with Milt, and if we could use a beetle on it, Milt would use a beetle. And in the beginning I didn't really know, but now I understand why. It's, if you added up how many swings I would need on 100 lineal feet day to set all that material back to where it was by hand, or get another person and very lightly, really, just set that material back with a bigger hammer and two people, you've just saved yourself a lot of swings.
Yeah, I'd say 1.5 inches, you start stepping up to maybe 1 line of cotton, 1 line of oakum. And then as you get closer to 1.75 inches, 2 inch, it's usually 2 lines of cotton, 1 line of oakum. Sometimes if the seam is wide, it'll be 1 line of cotton, 2 lines of oakum. Again, that's just because the oakum is a more fibrous material and takes up more of the outside of that seam, the space that's needed to be filled. Yeah, so on the Western Flyer right now, we're a lot of 2-inch thick planks. We'll put 2 lines of cotton and 1 line of oakum. The cotton comes in a paper sack that's a continuous thread of cotton. If you open up your tube of paper and you leave the cotton all night, it actually will puff up quite a bit. And Moose always taught me if you roll it in a ball, it keeps it nice and tight, which allows it to be a more consistent thread when you go to put it in the seams. So the first layer, you try to drive all the way to the back of the seam as fine as you can get it. And essentially you thread and set and make each layer. I think there are people who do threading and setting of the first layer, then threading and setting and making of the 2 layers of cotton. I was taught to thread, set, and make every layer. So once there's 2 layers of cotton, then the outer layer is oakum, which is a hemp strand. It's actually a much coarser fiber than cotton. So for the most part, it fills up the outside of the seam. So yeah, so oakum is hemp. And the majority of the oakum I've heard is produced in Hungary. I end up using English oakum, which I find it's in a big round, a 9-pound round. And I find it to be a lot more consistent than some of the other oakum I've used that come in really compressed little bales. And I know some people will take it right off the round and thread it right into the seam. It tends to be a little thick and a little flat at the same time. It's more material in a very flattened version. So I was taught to split that strand of oakum for most of the seams I do. Some of the seams, if I'm working on a power scow, I won't split the oakum. I'll just take it in right off the round and I'll roll it. The reason you spin or roll it is to produce a more consistent strand. And you know, that allows anything you can do in this process to make consistency produces a much longer lasting product. So each layer you put in with cotton with your threading iron, and I tell everybody the threader is, you do about 90% of your work with the threading iron. And I was always taught to get the threading iron to a mere polish so that it doesn't want to drag the cotton and oakum back out of the seam. And then once you thread with this, then you set with this, which is small X's, kind of working the cotton and oakum that you've threaded into the seam. It's setting it back to the back of the seam. And then once you get finished with that step, you use what's called making irons, which all have varying thicknesses. And that's the last step, is making back to the back of the seam. So you're compacting each layer as far back and as hard as you can get it. Yeah, this particular mallet is a Drew, and that's, as are all my irons that I use. They have been known as the highest quality corking tools ever made. And so while there are others that are also very good, I pretty much stick to the Drews. Yeah, this mallet was probably made maybe 100 years ago. It's hard to say. Sometimes you can find the maker's stamp in it. At some point you get to the point where you can just tell if it's a Drew or not. You know, you go to find these on eBay, and a really good Drew mallet will cost you $350. And the cost of them goes up because there are less and less good mallets around. I'm Brad Siemens. I'm a shipwright, and I work for the Port Townsend Shipwrights Co-op.
And that's it, the end of another chapter in the rebuilding of the Western Flyer. Hope you got your fill of corking in this video. I think some of that slow motion is pretty incredible. I mean, to be able to see corking at 120 frames a second, you know, see the subtlety of the iron walking down the seam is pretty incredible. But anyway, going forward into 2021, you heard me right, Happy New Year. 2020 is in the rearview mirror finally. Going into 21, a lot of great stuff going on with the boat project like always. We're starting to talk mechanical, engine, electrical, hydraulics. Still got tons of great woodworking going on, so plenty of stuff going on with the boat in 21. But I am starting to put together some side projects that kind of dive into the Western Flyer Foundation, the essence of this restoration. What is it all about? Some of that passion that surrounds the Western Flyer Foundation. So I hope you stick with me through all those videos. But until the next video and the next episode, thanks for watching.
And you can also feel it in the speed at which the mallet wants to fly off of your iron. It's like a shotgun coming off of there. It's a really interesting and weird thing that not everybody can pick up on. But the more you do it, the more you can hear that high-pitched thud at the last seam that you make back.